Micron is one of the world's leading manufacturers of memory chips, such as DRAM and NAND flash. These chips are essential for many electronic devices, such as smartphones, computers, and servers. Micron has a large market share in China, which is the biggest consumer of memory chips in the world. However, Micron's business in China is under threat. The Cyberspace Administration of China, CAC, announced a ban on Micron products for Chinese companies working on key infrastructure projects. The CAC claimed that Micron products pose cybersecurity risks and national security concerns for China. The CAC did not provide any evidence or details to support its allegations. The ban is a major blow to Micron, which relies on China for about half of its revenue. It also affects many Chinese companies that depend on Micron's chips for their products and services. The ban could disrupt the global supply chain of memory chips, which is already facing shortages and high prices due to the pandemic and other factors. The ban is also seen as a political move by China to retaliate against the US for its sanctions on Chinese tech companies, such as Huawei and SMIC. The US has accused these companies of violating export controls and posing national security threats. The US has restricted their access to American technology and markets. The ban on Micron is part of a broader trend of techno-nationalism, where countries use technology as a tool to advance their economic and geopolitical interests. This trend could lead to more conflicts and fragmentation in the global chip industry, which relies on cooperation and interdependence among different countries and regions. China has taken a drastic step to cut off the supply of US-made memory chips to its domestic industries. The Cyberspace Administration of China announced on Sunday that it has banned Chinese companies working on key infrastructure projects from buying products from US semiconductor manufacturer Micron, citing serious cybersecurity risks. Micron is one of the largest memory chip makers in the United States and derives more than 10% of its revenue from mainland China. This decision is a direct response to the sanctions imposed by Washington and its allies on China's chip sector. Since October, the US has imposed sweeping export curbs on advanced chips and chip-making equipment to China, in an attempt to prevent China from using them for military purposes. Japan and the Netherlands, both key US allies, also announced restrictions on overseas sales of chip-making technology to countries including China in March. Chips are at the heart of the technological rivalry between the US and China. They are used in a wide range of devices and systems, from smartphones and computers to satellites and missiles. China has its own chip manufacturers, but they are mostly limited to low to mid-end processors used in home appliances and electric vehicles. China relies heavily on imports for high-end chips, especially from the US. The ban on Micron's products will have a significant impact on both sides. For Micron, it will mean a loss of revenue and market share in one of its biggest markets. For China, it will mean a disruption of its supply chain and a setback for its ambitions to become a tech superpower. The ban will also affect many Chinese companies working on critical infrastructure projects, such as 5G networks, artificial intelligence, cloud computing and smart cities. The ban is a clear sign that the tech war between the US and China is escalating and that there is no end in sight. The two countries have been locked in a bitter dispute over trade, human rights, cybersecurity and regional influence for years. The tensions have worsened this year after a suspected Chinese spy balloon was shot down by US fighter jets in February, and Beijing continued to deepen its ties with Russia despite its continued invasion of Ukraine. The ban also raises questions about the future of global cooperation and innovation in the chip industry, which depends on cross-border flows of talent, capital and technology. The chip industry is facing many challenges, such as rising costs, shrinking margins, and increasing complexity. The ban could further fragment the industry and hamper its ability to meet the growing demand for chips in various sectors. The ban shows that the US and China are drifting further apart on tech policy and that they are willing to use their economic leverage to gain an edge over each other. The ban also shows that the stakes are high for both sides, as chips are not only vital for economic development but also for national security and strategic interests. China's decision to ban some sales of Micron products to its key infrastructure operators is a major blow to the U.S. chip maker and a sign of the escalating tech rivalry between the two superpowers. Micron is one of the largest memory chip makers in the world, and it derives more than 10% of its revenue from mainland China. The ban could cost Micron billions of dollars in lost sales and put pressure on its profit margins. But the ban also hurts China's own chip sector, which is struggling to catch up with the global leaders in advanced semiconductor technology. China relies heavily on foreign suppliers for high-end processors that power its smartphones, computers, servers, and other critical devices. The ban could disrupt China's supply chain and hamper its efforts to build a self-reliant chip industry. The ban is part of a broader cybersecurity review that China launched in April, after the US and its allies imposed sweeping export curbs on Chinese chip companies over national security concerns. The US accuses China of using its chips for military purposes and stealing intellectual property from American firms. China denies these allegations and calls the sanctions discriminatory containment. The ban also comes amid rising geopolitical tensions between the US and China over issues such as trade, human rights, Taiwan, and the South China Sea. The two countries have been locked in a bitter rivalry for global influence and technological supremacy. The chip war is one of the most visible and consequential fronts of this conflict, as chips are essential for both economic development and military capabilities. The ban raises questions about the future of the global chip industry, which has been deeply intertwined and interdependent for decades. It also poses challenges for both countries to find alternative sources of supply and demand for their chips. The ban could trigger more retaliation and countermeasures from both sides, further escalating the tech war and disrupting the global chip market.